Today we are going to talk about the Toulmin model of argument. And I wanted to give you a video on this content. Your book does a pretty good job of explaining it, but sometimes I feel like the textbook makes it a little more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm going to give you just a brief overview and a few examples, maybe a little bit more simplified than like all the charts and stuff that the book has. I feel like those really aren't necessary to explaining the Toulmin model of argument. So, first of all, let's just go over the terms and make sure you understand those. The first couple are really easy. A claim, what the author is trying to prove, his thesis statement, and we've already talked a lot about claims in this class. You learned about different types of claims. So you should be able to identify that pretty easily in an argument. Support, reasons, evidence. There are lots of different kinds of support. Data, factual support. A subclaim is a type of support. Any kind of evidence. And again, we did a whole chapter on types of proofs. So you should be pretty familiar with that. This third term, warrant, is what often gets students and can be a little hard because it's kind of an abstract idea. So a warrant is what the author assumes his audience believes and values. And what's difficult when analyzing, so if you're analyzing either a written argument or a visual argument, the warrant is often unstated. It's often implied. So it's not like you can underline a sentence and be like, this is the warrant. Where often with the claim, you can do that. You could highlight a sentence and be like, this is the author's claim. Or you can highlight certain elements of the paragraph and be like, this is the author's support. A warrant is almost like a worldview that the author is, he's assuming this is a worldview, this is a belief system that his audience embraces. And so that's what he's appealing to. He's appealing to that belief system, that set of values, and that's what he's basing his whole argument on. So hopefully that will click once I give you a couple examples. But just so you know, I do think warrant is probably the most difficult term, not just to wrap your head around, but it is one of the more difficult terms to identify in a Toulmin analysis. So there you go. Backing is simply just explanation to support the warrant. So sometimes, it's the warrant is what the author assumes his audience believes, but he wants to reinforce that, so he provides more details, more information to say, yes, this is a good, true system of value. This is the right way to think about this issue. So that's what backing is. It's really just another, I call it another layer of support for the warrant. A rebuttal, this is a pretty common term that you've probably learned about before. And basically a rebuttal is a counter argument. So if there is a weakness in that author's argument, he will probably acknowledge it. Like, yes, it is possible this is a weak element in my argument. Or yes, you could make this counter argument to my claim. And that actually often strengthens an argument to acknowledge the weaknesses. So that's rebuttal. And then a qualifier is just language that qualifies the claim. Instead of saying, all children should attend public school, say many. Or animal testing should never be used. Say animal testing should rarely be used. So instead of using words like always and never and all or none, using words like many, often, few, usually. And what that does is it just kind of softens the claim a little bit and allows for the fact that there can be exceptions. All right, there can be exceptions to this claim. There are going to be outlying circumstances where this claim doesn't always apply. So that's what a qualifier is. All right, so those are the different terms you need to understand. And I know your textbook talks about contextual warrants versus logical warrants. And honestly, you don't worry about that. Just make sure you understand the basic concept of a warrant. You're not going to have to identify between contextual versus logical warrants. I just want to know that you understand the concept of what a warrant is. Okay? So, a couple more things you need to know about Toulmin. 3 elements are present in every argument. So every single argument, whether it's visual, verbal, written, is going to have a claim, support, and warrant. All right, so those three elements are present in every argument. The other elements, backing, rebuttal, and qualifier, may or may not be present. Not every argument provides a qualifier. Not every argument provides a rebuttal or backing. So it's important to know the distinction between those. And then finally, just to give you a sense of why we're doing this, obviously, anytime you analyze something, you get practice in critical thinking. And understanding argument hopefully will make you a more effective arguer. So, that's kind of like the real life reason we use the Toulmin model. More practically speaking, you need to understand this concept because you'll be writing an in-class essay as part of your midterm based on Toulmin. So it's very important for you to understand this so that you can do well on that element of your midterm and get those points. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So let's say that somebody makes the claim, children should not play video games, right? So claim a policy, and they might use to support video games encourage violent behavior, all right? So the warrant, now I just want you to think about this. What are they assuming their audience believes about violent behavior, right? They're assuming that their audience believes that violent behavior is undesirable. Now, if someone was writing an essay about why children should not play video games, would they state that violent behavior is bad? No, you assume that other people believe that violent behavior is not a good thing. We do not want our kids running around, punching each other, or some people try to make links between violent video games and these different horrific school shootings and whatnot. But that's not really something that needs to be said. So hopefully that helps you kind of put together that a warrant it's the underlying worldview, the underlying assumption of what is either valuable or unvaluable, what is good or bad. Another way you can look at warrant or kind of put together those pieces, and I stole this example from your textbook because it's a really good one. The President of the United States is doing a poor job. So let's say someone makes that claim. And as support, they say the economy is the worst it has been in 10 years. So what are they assuming their audience believes? Not just that, the economy being bad is undesirable, but they're also making a connection between the President of the United States executing his job and the state of the economy. So that's another type of warrant, is making that connection. So here we have the connection that the president is responsible for the economy, at least in part. And so they're assuming that their audience is going to make that connection. The president is doing a bad job. Look at the economy. It's terrible. So they're assuming their audience believes that the president is in part responsible for the state of the economy. And this is the type of argument where we might have that backing, where they give more information. Well, the president made this decision, and look how it directly affected the economy. And that would be the backing, that they provide evidence linking the president to the state of the economy, if that makes sense. All right, so those are some basic examples of claim support warrant. And then I have one more example here that has all 6 elements of Toulmin. So here's another claim that someone might make. Medical testing should not be performed on animals. And that person might give the support. The testing subjects animals to pain and stress and may lead to poor health. Okay, so that's their support. So they believe the warrant there is that people value the well-being of animals. People don't want animals to be in pain or under stress or just have that testing be detrimental to their health. So what they do as they develop the argument is include backing to further reinforce that warrant. Animals have rights that should be protected. Animals shouldn't be abused just for our well-being. And so they include that as part of their argument, and that would be considered backing. A rebuttal might be the person might acknowledge that in the case of serious research, such as cancer-related research, some animal testing may be necessary. Or they might claim the rebuttal that certain types of animals are it's more acceptable to perform testing on rats than on, say, cats and dogs or something like that. But they would, have some sort of basically say this may be the exception to my claim, or this is the counter argument that finding a cure for cancer may take precedence over, trying to protect animal rights. And then a qualifier would be using words like for the most part or generally speaking, testing on animals should be avoided. So I want you to notice here that the qualifier is really almost a restatement of the claim, really. So testing on animals should be avoided, but they're softening that claim for the most part, usually, generally speaking. So that's really what a qualifier is. It's just that type of language that says, well, this claim may not be applicable in every single circumstance. So a qualifier and rebuttal are actually very similar ideas right there. So I hope that gives you a little better understanding of just the basics of these Toulmin terms and how they're applied to argument. And so the next thing I want to show you in this video is the sample that I uploaded. And hopefully you've already read this. If you haven't, actually, I encourage you to go ahead and stop, read the article before you, because I'm not going to read it out loud. So this actually pulled from an old edition of Perspectives on Argument. In the new edition, they cut this example, but it's such a good example of Toulmin that I wanted to provide it for you. And so this article is written by this guy, basically, and he's writing for a Christian newspaper saying that, Disney films are no longer appropriate, type of thing. So, and you can see here that this was actually published in the 90s. So I don't know what he would say now. But anyway, so as you read this article, he talks about, why Disney is no longer good. He gives all these different examples of why he thinks Disney is bad. And he even talks about the Disney conglomerates that make other types of movies. And so that's his whole argument. The main thing I want to draw your attention to is the second part of the PDF, which has a sample Toulmin analysis, because this is what you are going to be doing. So for the in-class essay, for the assignment, you're going to be given an article. I'm also going to provide you with the choice of a visual argument, and you are going to have to write an analysis. And so this sample analysis by student Beth Brunk is a really good example of what I want you to do for your in-class essay. So basically, you'll refer to the article in What Happened to Disney Films. John Evans claims that Disney is not making the same caliber of movies that it was in the past. Disney films are not suitable for young audiences. So basically, this is what the author claims. And make sure you use those words, right? Use the Toulmin terms. Evans supports his claim through specific scenes and lines from several Disney movies. And so then the student gives, not every example, but several examples of why Evans, how he supports his claim that Disney is no longer appropriate for young children. And then Evans' argument has two warrants. Basically, the idea that Disney should only be making movies suitable for children, and that movies that are suitable for children are based on these Christian ideologies and portray the white man in a positive light. So, an argument can't have more than one warrant. And so when you write your essay, your analysis, you can do that. You can identify in, just one warrant, or maybe you see two. What is the author assuming is true? What is his worldview? So this person has a worldview that what is suitable for children are based on Christian values, and that Disney basically should be making movies that are based on those values. And I'm not saying that this racial issue is a Christian value. I think that's overstating a little bit there. But that's another thing for another day. Okay, then identifies the rebuttal. Evans anticipates rebuttal by naming some Disney movies such as Iron Will, Angels in the Outfield, and The Mighty Ducks that are considered suitable for children. The backing for his warrants is Christian doctrines and the Bible. Although he does not appeal to either explicitly throughout the article, he does say that Simba's conversation with his father violates this biblical principle, and the idea that this worldview underlies his entire argument. So this is a really example of how the backing is linked to the warrant, right? His warrant is based on this Christian worldview, What should be suitable for children. They shouldn't be exposed to these. He's saying they shouldn't be exposed to these type of objectionable elements. And so the backing is reinforcing that worldview, giving more information. And then the student talks about the qualifier, and he does a really good job identifying that. The qualifier is basically saying for those parents who want to select only wholesome, decent entertainment for their families. So not all parents are going to agree with his claim. Not all parents are going to have the same worldview. So this article is essentially what you are going to be doing, okay? So make sure you read this over a couple times. Now, I also want to show you really quickly, now this is from your textbook, how you would analyze a visual argument. So a type of a cartoon or an ad, something like that. And so your book gives this example of this cartoon with this family, in the car on a road trip. And the dad says, road trips are getting lonelier and lonelier. And then it shows all the people, on their phones and tablets. So if you go a couple pages over, let's see, I think it's more. Here we go. It gives a little example of an analysis of the road trip cartoon. And this also does it's a pretty good example of how to analyze visual argument. Let's see. And so what you would do too, if you don't think there's a rebuttal or a qualifier, if you don't think there's backing, you would just say no direct rebuttal or qualifier appears in this cartoon. Or, there's no rebuttal or qualifier in the argument. So that is an example of that. All right, and then I wanted to go over also really quickly kind of what this assignment is going to look like. So obviously, before you do the in-class essay, you want to make sure you understand the terms. Look over these examples that I've provided, and then I have the page numbers in your textbook. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you both an article and a visual advertisement to look at. And so what you're going to do is I want you to remember to use the Toulmin terms. So the words claim, support, warrant, backing, rebuttal, qualifier, all of those should appear in your essay. If you don't use the terms, then you're not going to get a good grade, because the whole point of this is for you to show me that you understand these terms and that you can apply them to an argument. And that's all I'm looking for. I'm not going to be grading, grammar really tough in this essay. Obviously, I, try to write in complete sentences and use the best grammar that you can, but it's really more based on content. So try to mimic the example that I've shown you. As far as the main weakness that students fall into is that they just write me a summary, okay? So that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want a summary of the article or a summary of the advertisement. I want you to take those Toulmin terms and analyze, which basically means to break down, break apart, analyze that argument with those terms. And then in the final paragraph of your essay, evaluate the argument. Do you think it's effective? Why or why not? So just give me, a little short paragraph, a few sentences of why or why not that you feel the argument is effective. I'm not going to ask you to create a works cited entry, but if you do quote the article, I do expect you to use quotation marks appropriately and your parenthetical in-text citation. So just, give the author's last name in your in-text citation. If there's a page number, give the page number, but you'll have 45 minutes. So I do, like the article I give you, I try to give you one that's pretty short, so you don't have to spend a ton of time reading it. So hopefully 45 minutes should be enough time for you to write your analysis. Okay, so if you have any questions about this, just let me know, and make sure that you take the time to really study and understand, read that chapter in your text, read the sample analysis several times, and you should be good to go.